Hey, Alex, you recognize something?
Hey, there it is.
Ah, dang it, my stupid background. If you ever want to see your 4-disc collection again, you will send me $100 and something else in the mail. Guys, I have our new guest, Alex. I have his Alien quadrilogy that he let me borrow in 2011, and I still have it.
It's a 9-disc quadrilogy. I think it has some extended versions on there, and I'm pretty sure it cost me $199 when I bought it. $199, you think?
Now it's like $10. You know, I tried to put it on eBay, no one would buy it. So
it's probably worth it. The only one that responds is me.
So, guys, if you want justice for Alex, start the hashtag free Alien quadrilogy, and then I'll cave.
It's a long hashtag.
Well, yeah, it could be longer,
but worth it.
The only person who ever texts us about our podcast is on the podcast right now.
I literally tried to lend my friend the Alien movies on Blu-ray, and she only had a DVD player, so that would have came in handy. Last week, that happened.
Well, let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys. This week we're talking about shows that are old enough that Leonardo DiCaprio is starting to get ready to date them, or to dump them. Dang it! I don't want to do this show anymore. You know what? I'm not taking a second take. That's all you get.
I was going to leave that in anyways.
Yeah.
I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Paul.
I'm Alex.
And we're professionals. Well, we've got our first time guest Alex on. I had said before, typically we'll let our guests talk about what are some of their top shows. Alex, is there any show that's like one of your top favorites that's not in the early 2000s bracket?
Yeah, I mean, the easy number one is going to be Friends. It carried over into the 2000s, but that's just an easy gimme right there. But
yeah,
other ones, Walking Dead, Sons of Anarchy. If Walking Dead would have ended a little bit sooner, it could be one of my top shows. But after season 5, it went downhill.
Is Walking Dead a 2010 show then?
Oh, did you say in 2000?
No, I said outside of it.
Yes, it started outside of, I think it was late of the 2000s, I think.
That sounds
maybe
right.
Towards the end of it.
Oh, yeah, 2010. You're right. Yep. Look at you. You got it.
I'm like, I swear I had my facts right.
So, Alex, do you remember, it was back when we were probably like 10 or 11, and we were watching Friends at your house, maybe like a little bit too young to be watching Friends. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be just the scene where the girls were talking about reading Playboy magazines. Mm-hmm. And that's when your mom comes home and says, what are you watching? Turn that off.
Yep, that's how it always goes down. Yep, the worst possible timing.
It's that meme of like the game when I'm playing it versus the game when my parents walk into the room. It's like the one time you don't want them walking in.
Yeah. But I think outside of like my dad and my cousin, you're probably the guest on the podcast I've known the longest.
I would say so, pretty much since birth.
Yeah. Actually, I might have known you longer than Tammy. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
I think my dad's got you beat, though.
I think so, yeah. By a couple days.
Yeah.
A few days. Nice. Alex, you were one that like I heard about more than I met you for a while. Like, because you left right when I came in, or pretty quick to that. And so it's just like Alex, and I'm like, who is this Alex guy? And then I was the new drummer. I took over.
Yeah. I thought they were playing a prank on me because I left for college. Like, oh, this guy Matt, he's so funny. He loves movies. He plays the drums. I'm like, you guys are just messing with me right now.
Now I know you're lying. No one has ever said Matt is so funny.
Well, did you hear the one-liner? It was pretty good.
One person says Matt is so funny, and that's Matt.
That's true. I do toot my own horn a lot. All right. Well, let's get to it because there's a lot of shows in the 2000s. So if you are unfamiliar with what we've been doing, we've been covering shows from different decades, starting all the way back at the 60s when TV was invented, and but up till now. And so we're at the 2000s. These are the early 2000s, 2000 to 2010. And so there's a lot of stuff, but really like the landscape of TV to me changed even in the 2000s. So there's some that are like shows that are so pivotal that they change what things look like. So we've already had an episode just about this genre, but I feel like it's not the best place to start, but a place that I'm going to start because it segues is I'm just going to bring up Survivor, because a show like Survivor changed the landscape of reality TV. And that's what we saw, like the biggest upheaval, in my opinion, of shows into the 2000s was all of this flood of reality TV, such as The Apprentice and the Mole and Big Brother. But to me, it started with Survivor. Biggest Loser, yeah.
Amazing Race.
Yeah, we got 2 Survivor haters on here, so it might not be the best topic, but
Too bad.
This was the heyday of Survivor.
But you can hate Survivor and acknowledge its impact.
And they're still beating it to death today. So
yeah,
I honestly, even I stopped watching a couple seasons ago.
Wow, that's saying something.
After the all-winter season, it really went downhill.
So since you guys hate Survivor,
after season 87, it really started to go downhill.
Well, it was a little bit cool because they brought back like a whole season of previous winners, which was kind of cool.
Now that Jeff is on Social Security, I think it's played out. It's Go ahead, Brian.
On the early 2000s, Survivor, like, it wasn't just, oh, do you watch Survivor? Everyone watched Survivor. The celebrities of Survivor in those early days, you didn't need to specify who they were. Everyone knew Colby. Everyone knew Richard Hatch. Everyone knew Johnny Fairplay, to the point where one of their finales, like season 4, I think it was, I'm not saying I'm a fan of it, but Rosie O'Donnell was like the host of their after show back when she was famous, and she rode in with Colby Donaldson on a motorcycle. Like, that's like, and it was after the Super Bowl, I think. Like, that's the impact.
What a claim to fame. If you're Colby.
You say everyone has heard of them. I have no idea who those people are.
Rosie O'Donnell? No.
I know Rosie O'Donnell.
Unfortunately.
All right, since you guys hate Survivor, let me pitch just this real quick to you. What would you say is your top reality show? Even if you hate all reality TV, what's the one that you lean the most towards?
Okay, so I have seen every single episode of The Biggest Loser that has ever been made.
We're not talking about Vikings football. We're talking about
no. The weight loss TV show. I know, like, it's a little bit controversial because, a lot of people were upset about, the long-term effects, the health effects. Most of the people that were on the show lost, many, many pounds, sometimes well over 100 pounds, and gained most of it back almost every time. But man, it was just fascinating and inspiring and fun. I love that show. I've seen every episode, even the reboot that they had a couple of years ago.
Well, when you go back to real life, your life isn't going to be, I'm working out 10 hours a day and have professional chefs make my food every day. Like,
but
a little bit harder in the real world.
But to be fair, behind the scenes, they weren't like doing 10 hours a day. It was like a small window that they would film, and it was just like really hard workout, and then they would like kind of starve them and give them these, like, the behind the scenes of The Biggest Loser is really kind of sad and weird.
Dark. Yeah.
But that's probably where the controversy came from.
But all the reality TV shows are like that. They're all kind of fake. In fact, Biggest Loser has more successful relationships that came from it than The Bachelor does. Or like at one point that was true. So
yeah, there were several weddings.
What year did Survivor come out?
I think it was 99 was the first.
No, it was 2000.
It was 2000.
It might have been filmed in 99, but it aired in 2000.
Gotcha. So
I didn't put a lot of reality shows on my list, and I don't even know if this is considered a reality show. It's a game show, but I put Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on there.
Yeah.
That was like
the early days with Regents.
When I was that age, like, we were all watching, playing the game and everything, and it sparked a whole bunch of different things. It's not really reality, but
was that like the prime of that? Was that in the 2000s or was that the late 90s?
It started 99.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it went into the mid 2000s, and I think it stopped and they started again with a different host. But Regis Philbin, I mean, that was like huge thing. We had the board game, and we did all this stuff after that.
And that was also another thing that kicked off a couple other like spawns, like Weakest Link was a big one, and then eventually into Deal or No Deal was the next primetime TV game show that we had, and then that one was another one that got beat to death, and like maybe primetime game shows aren't our thing anymore.
Didn't they bring that back with Jane Lynch too? I don't know how old that was, but I saw it on TV. I don't know how old the rerun was.
I think that was Glee.
I always get those two mixed up.
Which is on here. And
now I want to just make a clear distinction here, because I think because this decade is so massive for TV, I think we should like make a hard and fast rule that the shows that we stick to they're primarily from this decade. So shows like Breaking Bad, which started in 2009, I think, and Glee, which is late 2000s to 2010s, Parks and Rec, same type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we should talk about those because I mean we have so many different shows to talk about that are primarily in this decade.
Yep.
But we could talk about shows that started in like 98, 99, because those would be primarily in this decade.
Yeah. I think if the majority of the run is in 2000s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And especially when it's in its peak of popularity. Because that, with Breaking Bad, it wasn't super popular when it first came out. Like, it was a new show and everything, but it became very popular after 2010.
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of it till it was all done, so I got to binge the entire series.
Yeah.
Yeah, because AMC is not a widely seen channel, and then even then they kind of sucked with their rights on their like trying to do their own streaming service, and so when they let it go on Netflix, which is like I think season 2 or season 3, then so many people were like, "Oh, I've heard about this show," and then it really blew up.
Well, I remember when Breaking Bad came out and like, finding out what channel it was on. I was like, it's on AMC. I'm like, what? That's really weird. But then you had Walking Dead come out on AMC after that. Mad Men came on AMC after that. So I think it started to spark that. But again, that's different decade.
So can I make an observation about this decade that's not necessarily related to one specific show? I think I would consider 2000 to 2010, honestly, the actual real golden age of TV.
Yes,
because
I would agree.
Me too.
So much in this decade. And I think there's a few reasons for that maybe you guys have more to add to this list. But one of the things is the fact that they were making like cinematic quality TV shows. And I think one of the main reasons for that was the change in the actual screen we're watching on. Like you look at what people were watching TV on in the 90s, like the visual didn't play as much of a part in the 90s. It was more about the comedy or the lines or the storyline, where the visual side of things dramatically changed with widescreen, flat screen TVs. And then and the other thing is like box set binging was kind of like a precursor to what we have now with streaming. And that was kind of that first like opportunity to like sit down and watch an entire series at once. Nobody had done that before previously.
Yeah, and speaking of how great Lost is, no, honestly, like to me, I feel like Lost was one of the big catalysts for this, and part of that was just sinking as much as they did into the budget of that pilot episode, and because of them doing that, then the ABC execs are like, we have to make sure that this is a hit. I remember they played like the pilot 3 or 4 times in the course of like a week and a half, and they're like, please watch this, make sure you watch this, because you won't get anything else, and we know if we don't buy you in right away, you're not gonna get on the Lost train. But then it did become that phenomenon, and I think like a lot of other shows saw the success of Lost, whether you hate it or not. It was successful, crazy successful, and a lot of other shows that you're talking about then started to emulate that. Well, let's tell stories that are just overarching things that aren't like a week to week. You have to actually watch every one and not just come in on it at every episode.
Right. Especially for like a network to do. It was. I mean, I can't think of another show that had that kind of caliber, like on a network TV show. I mean, I remember it was a huge deal when Lost was coming out. Like everyone was talking about, oh, you're gonna watch Lost tomorrow, and then after that, it's the cliffhangers. So everyone's talking about what happened on last week's episode, and it was one of the very first shows to really. To have that cliffhanger, but then also to kill its main characters like that. I don't know any other show that would like do that frequently, killing off main characters. You just had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah,
so
everyone was on the table for deaths.
Yes,
and everyone was paying attention. Like I remember with Lost, in the 4th season, they brought back a character to the main cast who had left to come back, and I was frustrated because it was a big reveal in like the 7th or 8th episode that, oh my gosh, Michael's back. But then the first 7 episodes, if you watch the names over the credits, starring they put his name in there for the first 7 episodes.
And they announced it too ahead of time. It's like, oh, he's coming back. I'm like, well, that ruins it.
Like,
it does, yeah.
I know it's contract stuff, but like I would say just keep him off of the promotional photos, keep his name off the cast until he's revealed. That would just you're ruining your own reveal. But no, Lost was, and it's like not only that the whole thing of the cliffhangers, it's letting people theorize what they think is actually going on in between everything going. I know we all had those talks as well. I think, Paul, you drop off towards the end?
Yeah, I watched, I think, the first 5 seasons, and then how many were there? 7? Was it 7? 6 seasons. Okay, then I watched the first 4, and the last 2 just it got so weird for me, and I just wasn't into it anymore.
It's one of those shows where I think they could have, like most shows, ended a little bit sooner. Stop trying to drag it out, because it did get a little far fetched. And I haven't seen it since the first time I watched everything through, so I don't even fully remember everything. But I remember there being still some plot holes in it. But again, I think it sparked a lot of similar type of shows. I think it was very pivotal.
Brian could give you a detailed explanation if you wanted to.
So could Matt.
Yes, but we wouldn't finish this podcast until next week. So
no, we did an episode all about explaining Lost already. Actually, like a couple years ago.
Yeah, I didn't text after that one, guys.
Yeah, I noticed. We noticed that.
But the thing with Lost also, what was I gonna say?
Well, while you think of it too, like because I don't think we're going to talk long about these shows, but shows like CSI or the other spin-offs of CSI, they started off as these episodic shows that like you could just come in, it doesn't matter if you've seen the show at all before. By like the 3rd or 4th season in, when Lost was getting big, you could see the pressure from the producers that they started having these storylines.
That's what I was going to say.
We're going to be continuing through various episodes. You saw it with House too, which we'll probably get to.
Well, Lost, they had like an overall, like, this is how we want the show to end. We don't know when we're going to end. So especially in the 3rd season, there's kind of a lot of dud episodes, even though that season as a whole is great, but in the mix, there's also some really dud episodes. And they went to there's a particularly bad episode about Jack getting his tattoos. And so that's when they went to the producers and say, look, we're making this crap because we don't know when it's going to end. We don't want to like go our storyline too soon. And they agreed at that point, all right, we're going to set you up to finish in season 6. They had like episode planned out. So they know like this is where the season's going to end and start from there on. And they were able to actually move their story along, which is why in season 4, it really picks up. And it's like, it's a lot more stuff happening, a lot less them hanging out on the beach.
Right. Not just filler episodes, but there's actually purpose behind these things that are happening.
Because they have a timeline. They know when they're going to meet all these things.
But that frustrates me that they gave themselves a time limit, and then when the show ended, they're like, we just didn't have time to get into Libby and Walt. And it's like, you gave yourself the time limit. Give yourself an extra half season, and then have a couple episodes where we know what happened to Libby and we know what happened to Walt in the back, whatever.
So I think like the one of the major things about this entire decade is like the other kind of like mystery drama shows kind of in that same genre that were like massive. I'm thinking 24 was huge. And just to list off some other ones, I'm a huge Prison Break fan. I loved Prison Break.
You're naming off my list right now, Paul.
Heroes.
I had a great first season.
Heroes was an awesome first season, and then
I wrote down the show Heroes. I never watched it, but as soon as I wrote it down, I thought of Paul because I knew he loved it, and then I didn't really put it on here because I did hear it like it got pretty bad after season 1.
I didn't even watch season 2.
Yeah, right.
I watched season 2, and that was during the middle of the writer's strike. But you could tell, like before the writer's strike, they're like, "This is what happens now," and he does this, and then like the writer's strike happened, and it cut off like this cliffhanger that was left open-ended in the 2nd season, and like, we're not coming back to that, and the show just sucked after that. Here's another show, like, since we're just naming a couple that we're probably not going to jump into, there's another one that's pretty small that I liked, but it didn't have staying power, was Lie to Me. Do you guys remember that show?
Yeah,
I know it. I never watched it.
I liked it a lot. The idea of Tim Roth as this lie detector. Sure, like when you stop and think about it and really like flesh out like the reality is this, you're like, yeah, that's stupid. But it was fun TV for a season.
Yeah. What network was that on?
That was on Fox. So Fox had a lot of these.
Okay.
Like they were going for these type of shows that you're talking about, of like the 24 and these like the here's the other thing that we saw grow in the 2000s. Shows with an anti-hero. So we've already brought up House, and gets to Breaking Bad at the end of the 2000s, but we started to see the growth and the rise of anti-hero storylines. And so you had like Lie to Me was another like that sort of character. In Heroes, you had a number of anti-heroes in it too. But yeah, House was to me like the butter, the bread and butter of an anti-hero story arc. And so I love House. I think it's such a great show. It's my favorite medical. Well, Scrubs gives a run for its money, but
I do want to touch on 24 real quick too, because I think
Sure.
that was a really unique concept. I mean, the idea of a 1 day show over a 24-hour season, so 24 episodes, 1 hour each, and then having like all the drama and cliffhangers and the execution of the big twist at the end of season 1, where Nina is the bad guy. That was just
spoiler.
Yeah, well,
20 years ago, yeah.
Right. A deepest apologies to anyone who hasn't seen 24 yet. But there's a few more spoilers, that I won't get into. Yeah. But I mean, I thought that was just a groundbreaking idea, and I loved Prison Break for similar reasons too. Just the intrigue behind it, and like the way that they built it up, and the way that like you were always trying to figure it out, and you were never going to figure it out how it actually went down.
I feel like Prison Break got so much hate for really no reason. Like, oh, he's got to break out of prison again. But I honestly thought all 4 seasons were really solid. Season 3 is probably my least favorite one.
Same.
Where they're in the Panama prison. But like season 2, when they're on the run and, people are getting caught one by one, like I just thought it was just so entertaining. And then the last season when they're all working together with the people that they were against before, I just thought that was a really good show. And it's 4 seasons long. They didn't take it too far, but that's probably one of my, when I think of like my favorite shows, I usually first think of shows that I've seen from beginning to end, and it's not that long of a list because usually I stop watching after a while. But 24 is probably the first show that I watched like every single season. That's like 10 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
But Prison Break's another one of them. Lost is another one of them. And there's a whole another section that I'll talk about later that I watched all of them for too. But yeah, I just thought that show got a lot of hate for no reason.
Can we talk teen dramas too? Because there are a lot of teen dramas.
Sure. I've got one. I've got one that I really like.
I know which one you're gonna pick.
Which one?
Smallville.
You got it.
Yeah. It's a great show. Again, started a great show, and
the first 5 seasons are like dynamite, and then the 6 through 10 it's like you can break the show into 2. Like 1 through 5 is Smallville, and 6 through 10 is Metropolis, and 6 through 10 is just much worse. And you're just like, okay, I've dedicated this much time into it. I'm ready for it to end.
I feel like I have a list of shows that I just refused to watch because I knew some people just liked them so much, and Smallville is one of them. Like, for one, I just don't like Superman, and I just remember the Antonsons loved Smallville so much, and I just made it my decision. I'm just not going to watch it.
I never got into it either.
I liked Smallville. My favorite teen drama of the 2000s was, without a doubt, Friday Night Lights.
Jinx.
So
I think that was more 2010s. Was it not?
No, it was.
And I think I never watched that one because I knew Paul liked it so much too. So
I would say it was mid to late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2006 is when it started.
I was in high school, I think, when that was on. So yeah, probably sometime over after 05, maybe 06 or something.
Just some great characters, and being a sports guy, it just hit all the right notes for me.
Mm-hmm. And I love sports movies, so I feel like if I did just sit down and watch it, I would probably love it. But
and then there's, the whole category of shows that are pretty much all the same, like The OC and Gilmore Girls and One Tree Hill and Dawson's Creek.
Okay, time out. Okay, Dawson's Creek was not 2000s.
Was it not? I thought it started in the late 90s.
I mean, I think it was over by 2000.
Okay, well,
Is it really?
Well, take that one out. The other ones are all 2000s.
But I will not have you. I will not have you disgrace the name of the OC by putting it in the same category with those other stupid shows.
I really wanted to just real quick make Paul and Alex and then Dan proud of me. I'm in the middle of season 1. I'm almost at the end of it. I just finished the episode where
Of Dawson's Creek?
no, of Friday Night Lights, where Buddy's affair was found out. So they're in the playoffs. They're almost at state, and then I think there's 3 episodes left. So I'm like a season into it, pretty much.
It's pretty good.
So.
It's pretty good.
All right, this just in: Dawson's Creek, 98 to 2003.
Wow, that's
kind of right in the middle.
Okay, so we're both kind of wrong on that one.
It counts.
I would say the heyday was in the 90s.
I think 90s when I think of Dawson's Creek. Like, it seems like a 90s show, like Seventh Heaven, like that kind of like drama.
Hey, we all know that Beverly Hills zip code is 90210, but do you know what Dawson Creek's zip code is? 90108. For our lives to be over.
Oh my God.
That should have been your one-liner for the 90s decade.
That's a much better joke than me flubbing a Leo diss. So
No,
I disagree.
I will be honest. I loved the OC. I really loved the OC. I liked the characters. I thought it was a fun show. It's kind of one of those like guilty pleasures.
I think a lot of people have that. It's a guilty pleasure show because a lot of people will say, I've never watched it. But everyone who has watched it usually says they love it. The people that say they hate it are the people who have never watched it. So,
yeah. I would transition here to a comedy that's a teen comedy. Okay, so it's not a teen comedy, but these characters like perfectly mimic like a teen like cafeteria sort of clique, whatever. And I mentioned it earlier, but I love Scrubs. And I really do think that the idea of Scrubs comes from this idea of like, let's take these guys that are acting like the juvenile politics of high school and make a medical series about them. And it works really well. It works way better than I thought it should work, especially when they are like, hey, let's do some serious moments. You're like, we just had a whole storyline about if Todd is gay or not, and he can't figure it out. And then we end the episode on crying about this other story arc. Like, what show does this?
It's another show that I've never seen just for stubborn reasons, but I know if I were to sit down and watch it, I'd probably absolutely love it. But yeah, I don't have much to say about it. But that is, I feel like it's one of the first on a list of like first shows that did like the single cam type of comedy, like because that was early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I was trying to come up with a list of like what was the first show to really start doing that. And I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I Malcolm the Middle, I think, was a really good show in the 2000s. And it's like the earliest one I can see that did that single cam, right?
Yeah.
That just sparked
it was stylized very well, too.
Yeah, yep.
There were some great comedies in the 2000s, too. I mean, I think, like, there's just, we've kind of hit all the other genres, but, I mean, obviously The Office is maybe in that decade and expanding to the next one.
It's probably the most iconic single cam comedy.
Yeah.
But
How I Met Your Mother was in that decade.
We talked in the 90s episode about like the must-see TV of Thursday nights, and NBC had that locked down for a while. But then after Friends ended, they had this period where it wasn't so good. Like they didn't have that hit show. And so when The Office came around in 2006, it wasn't a hit right away, but they knew they had something. And so by the end of the second season, then they started to rebuild that, and they added like 30 Rock at 2006 to that lineup. I think My Name is Earl was in around that time frame. So then they started building that, and then it got better when they subbed some of those out and put in Parks and Rec, and there's one Community. And so by early 2010s, that was back to where it was in the 90s.
Monk was in that era too.
Oh,
you guys ever watch Monk?
Yeah.
My parents watched it.
I think it's underrated. I think it's kind of a throwback show, but I think it's pretty clever.
I like his character. I like that quirkiness, just really odd but really smart. I love shows like that have an interesting character like that.
Yeah, Tony Shalhoub is really great. I like him a
Mhm.
lot, and so the little bit that I've seen of it, I'm like, he's a good character. I don't know if it would hold my attention super well.
And
It's kind of similar to House, though, isn't it? Like the same type of character. He's not really
Less
a
dark.
likable person. Yes, but less dark for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
He seems like he's nice, but just he has his boundaries, and like he
Yeah.
let people in because of his own fears, where House can't let people in because he wants to be miserable. So
Right.
it's
I would
still a little
say-
bit of the social reserved.
Yeah, Monk is almost more like I don't know if you would categorize him as this, but even like maybe even autism or something along that
Mhm.
lines where
I think
social.
OCD. was-
Yeah.
OCD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Compulsive disorder.
I mean, and kind of in that same genre with kind of the comedic, hero action type thing would be Chuck too,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
which is one of Matt's big ones.
I love Chuck. I got myself all chucked out by how much we talked about it for a period of time. Then I'd watch it a lot, and I'm like, all right, I can go for a little bit without it now. That's okay. I thought you were going to
So there-
pivot to another USA show from this time period about solving crimes called Psych. I know some
That's
people
my
just
brother's favorite show.
loved. Yeah, they loved
Mhm.
Psych.
Mhm.
Brian, did you ever watch Psych?
Only a couple episodes. I just didn't have time to get into it.
I like the main characters and Corbin Benson, his dad. I like those three. But it was another one of those shows that I get, it just didn't hold my attention to like binge and keep going.
Mhm.
But it was a solid enough premise, and I enjoyed it when I watched it.
Yeah, that was my friend Jeff. Like I remember the two shows that he just loved. It was Scrubs and it was Psych. He just loved those two shows for some reason. But I never watched either of them.
I have some people who swear by Psych, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's good. It's not like
Mhm.
best show ever. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's like a whole other like type of comedy, and I don't even know how you'd really categorize it, but really just kind of maybe a little bit darker, but kind of goofier comedy, but one that really just stuck out to me that I just absolutely loved, and it's still going on now, but Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think that was a really pivotal show in the 2000s too, and it's been going on for like 1920s. I don't even know when it started, but still going on now. 2005, yeah. So started in the 2000s, but still going on now. So, but I think that was just a really different type of comedy that we weren't used to seeing, and FX was another kind of newer type of network that was putting those darker shows that were on there. But that's just a show that anyone can just sit down and just watch any random episode. And again, characters that are not likable whatsoever, but the things that they do and the situations they get into, it reminds me of like a live version of like South Park or Futurama or something like that. But that was a really good show.
There is that like birth of that genre, because I can't think of any before the 2000s that were like every character is a terrible person and you're supposed to laugh at how awful they are. Like we get that from Curb Your Enthusiasm. That started in 2000. Yep. That was definitely that type of show. And so I think It's Always Sunny took major credit from Curb Your Enthusiasm. But I think the one that finds a good middle ground for me, like it's like, because both of those actually like are a little off-putting for me just because of how terrible they are, and I'm like, it's hard to really get into this.
There's parts that are really hard to watch, yes.
Whereas for me, Arrested Development is that sweet spot.
Yeah.
You can watch it and be like, yeah, you guys all deserve all the crap you're going through, but it's really funny to see.
Right.
I mean, wasn't that kind of the punchline of the finale of Seinfeld too, is that the four of them were all pretty much terrible people?
Yep.
But because you were rooting for them, they didn't lean into it early on. They're just like, this is stupid stuff. But then there's like that finale really drives home that idea. Like, yeah, you guys all were laughing with us for a while, but if people were like this, they're not that good of people.
That's probably true of How I Met Your Mother too.
I think what was that?
Except for Marshall.
He's saying How I Met Your Mother. All those characters as well. I think you're right. I think there's a point to be made about how awful every character is, except for Marshall. He doesn't have too many knocks
Marshall's
against him.
the best.
Yeah.
But like Lily, she's the surprising, like, she's not that good of a, she kind of sucks,
No.
you know? And she's a kindergarten teacher, so I mean, you watch your kids, guys.
Another really big one in that same kind of category. That was another huge one in high school that everyone was talking about. Was Chappelle Show.
Oh yeah.
And that started a lot of other Key and Peele after that, and probably a whole bunch of other ones I can't think of right now. But Chappelle Show, it only really just 2 seasons. I think the third one is when Dave Chappelle left and went to Africa or something. No one knew what happened to him, and they had other people fill in for him. But the first 2 seasons, I mean, you can still quote those skits to
Prince
this day.
playing basketball.
Exactly. Yes. And Charlie Murphy. I mean, there's just so many skits that are just hilarious. And then, Key and Peele is like one of my favorite shows now. It's another show where you can just go into YouTube and watch any skit from Key and Peele and just laugh. But that all happened from, Chappelle Show.
I wouldn't credit Chappelle Show quite as much as being like influential, because like we've had variety shows for so long, but it definitely has changed the landscape a bit as it's gone along. Key and Peele and Dave Chappelle are both definitely more aimed at an adult generation versus like Carol Burnett. That's like, sure, it's aimed at adults, but it's family friendly,
Right. It's a little bit different because it had a small live portion of it, but they were all like, digital skits. Like SNL had their digital shorts and everything. And this show was primarily digital shorts. Let's cut these short videos, put it into a live performance. But yeah, like kind of what you said, it's more, catered to a more adult type of crowd.
Yeah. And even though SNL is also for an adult crowd, I feel like Chappelle Show pushed the boundaries a lot more than SNL did. And that might be the biggest thing we credit Chappelle Show with. Where Key and Peele, like, it'll comment on modern day stuff, but I don't feel like it pushes the boundaries, because I think Chappelle Show already pushed those for them. Or other shows like South Park has pushed them too. Like some that push that sort of envelope that you come in at a certain point. It's like, maybe in the 90s this would be edgy, but it's really not anymore. Like let's look at some animated shows. Futurama does not get the same hate that Simpsons did, even though it's just as inappropriate as Simpsons. But Futurama came right after. Here's another animated show from this time is Family Guy. And so Family Guy and South Park were picking up the mantle of, hey, Simpsons did it. We can make shows for adults that are animated, but we're gonna really be for adults. And like, they had to have this label on the penis envy episode of Family Guy at the very beginning of the episode. I remember that one. They're like, guys, this one's especially bad. So you really, if you have kids, don't let them watch this one.
I would say Simpsons was more controversial because of the time slot and the location that it was at. It was on Sundays after football, in that evening time slot on network TV.
Yeah.
See, and I remember it just watching the rerun. I think it was like 5:30 on Fox, like right after school.
Yep.
Simpsons is on. You know what I mean? Like in the middle of the day.
Yep.
But.
Yeah, either watch that or flip over to WB and watch Batman the Animated Series. Either one of those.
Take your pick.
Or Pokemon. I don't know. I don't remember what that was.
I have 2 shows on my list that I thought we should probably bring up that I didn't watch at all, but that were massive in this era. One of them was Grey's Anatomy, which I watched a little bit of that, but I mean, that was a big show. And then the other one, I
avoided saying, just because, like, not only because we talked about this last week, but Grey's Anatomy, it started in 2005, and because it's still going, I feel like that's a 2010 show. I feel like that's like when I heard so many people talking about it. It was big enough when it started, but really by 2010, it was like, now it's in peak form, and a lot of people are watching Grey's.
And then, I've watched I think I've watched 10 seasons of it, which is only like half of them. But I started watching it, when season 5 was probably airing, and I would say that's probably my guilty pleasure is Grey's Anatomy. But I did know when to stop watching it. So
Yeah, because I mean, Shonda Rhimes, she now has like a blank check for really starting any show that she wants to. She's going to get trusted because of the success of this. But it took until 2012. Sure, they had Private Practice as the spinoff show, so that was another Shonda Rhimes vehicle. But 2012 was the first non-Grays that she did with Scandal. And so that was its 7th season of Grays. So it's like it took her 7 years for people to be like, yeah, this is a big hit. Shonda, you can do what you want.
And I would say, I mean, the other one, Desperate Housewives, was
I
a
totally
very
forgot
big
about that show.
I have both of those on the same little category here. That one I never watched at all, but I knew it was a big deal.
And I would say reality TV too. That was also kind of the Hills era on MTV, which was maybe kind of like the OC, reality show, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And this was 16 and Pregnant around this time too.
Oh
Man.
man,
Probably, yes,
yeah,
I
probably
think
was.
So, yeah. The MTV shows, yeah.
2009.
There was that
2010.
There was that big VH1 reality show where they had the has-been celebrities. Oh gosh, what was it? I just remember Vanilla Ice was on it.
I don't
Anyways,
know.
I don't remember.
I
that
know
one.
what you're talking about.
That one. I'm gonna look it up.
Another show that I wrote down. I actually watched a good amount of it. I don't think I finished it. Actually, I should check and make sure this is in the air because I just was guessing. It's 2007 was when it debuted. But Mad Men. We were talking about like these Hollywood level shows, and like John Hamm, he wasn't huge at this time, but Jared Harris was, and he came on like the 3rd season, and he was on for a few seasons.
The Surreal Life.
Yep. I was just waiting for him to finish the Surreal Life.
I didn't bother. I wasn't
show.
listening to Matt. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Talk about Mad Men, guys. Mad Men also had Alexis Bledel. Is that Brian? Is that her name from Gilmore Girls?
Yeah.
There. So she was on for ARC. So like, I'm a little late in the conversation for this episode to talk about these cinematic shows, but I felt like Mad Men was that like highbrow sort of show where it didn't quite spell out things for you too. Like Lost was for the common denominator viewer. Sure, they didn't spell things out, but at the same time, it wasn't like we're going to do lofty concepts. Mad Men had some strange metaphor stuff that is like you're supposed to talk about it to really understand what the writers are trying to get at. And like it's one of those shows that's like it's not for everyone. It wasn't for me, and I'm like I don't really want to think that much about this. Plus, it's a little nihilistic too. It's obviously sexist, but there's a little bit of like nothing matters because you're not letting anything matter. And so it wasn't my high art sort of show, but it definitely struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah, and that came in, I think another one too, where it came in kind of towards the end of the decade and carried over into the 2010s. But I think, first couple, maybe it was popular right away. I never, that's another one, never really watched, but I knew it was people that watched it really liked that show, and it was a very iconic show. But yeah.
I had another one on here that I don't have a segue to, but if anyone, I've only got one left. So if anyone's got more.
Man, I have a whole category of shows that we haven't even talked about yet.
Okay, I want to hear the category.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I think of the 2000s, I think of HBO, Showtime, all these other networks that sparked all these big, production type of shows. We kind of talked about big productions before with 24, but I think that's really where HBO really took off. And this is my all-time favorite show ever, but The Wire is, oh my gosh, it is just a perfect show. Every single season, some aren't as good as the other ones, but what that show did, the whole show, when you ask about what that show is about, I mean, it's about the city of Baltimore.
Yeah.
And each season talks about a different area of Baltimore, whether it's the project or the port or the school system or, the political system. And it follows the same characters, but you'll have season 1, where you have your main character, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the detective in that show.
McNulty.
And you flash forward. What was
McNulty.
it? McNulty, yes. You have McNulty, but then you go into later seasons and he's in like one episode. So they don't like follow the main characters throughout this whole timeline, but they just focus on one certain area of of the city and follow the same kind of storyline. But that show, I think, it came out after Sopranos. I think Sopranos was the first one that really took off, like HBO and Showtime and all these different things. Never watched Sopranos, but yeah, The Wire is my all-time favorite show.
And whoever wrote that show, not only did they do a really good job representing Baltimore, but they also found the most Polish name possible for one of their characters in season 2, Frank Sabatka. That is like perfect Pole name.
No, but that's a show I could pick up and start over really anytime. And then I'm going to carry that over to probably my second favorite show of all time is Deadwood. That is another show that is phenomenal, but it only lasted 3 seasons because it never got that following until after it was canceled. And it was such a high budget show. So they put so much money into the costumes, into the backgrounds and everything. And it was just too high budget of a show and it wasn't getting a following. But finally, they did the first 3 seasons, and finally, just a couple years ago, they did a movie to kind of finalize everything because it just ended. You'd have no idea what happened to the characters and to the city and everything. And they finally did a movie to kind of like end everything because it got such a big following. But when I think of like my favorite TV shows, it goes down to those HBO shows because every single one of those that I started watching, I pretty much finished. They just really captivate you. The characters do, the storyline does. And again, kind of what Lost did, but any main character can die at any point. You have, no one is really safe. So it's like watching a very, very long movie over a long period of time, which is what I think makes these shows just so entertaining. Gets you to come back and see how the whole thing finishes out.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have The Wire if we didn't have The Sopranos. That's a show I didn't watch.
Oz is another one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, those shows really sparked all these. Game of Thrones wouldn't really be happening if it wasn't for these other shows to really kind of pioneer that.
It's kind of funny is I heard so many people like rave about The Shield, and so when I started watching The Wire, I actually thought I was watching The Shield, and because I didn't know any better, and so I'm like, okay, when does Michael Chiklis show up? I know he's in this, but I don't see him at all. But now I've watched like 2.5 seasons of The Wire, and I have seen 0 of The Shield.
I'd say I have a DVD box set of The Wire I could lend to you, Matt. But I borrowed it to somebody else, and I can't remember who. So if you're listening, if you have my Wire complete season on DVD, I would like that back.
But it's on HBO Max, and I have subscription to that.
I want the collector's box set.
So you can watch it in low resolution.
Exactly.
Give me that great 1080 glory. Yeah, love it. See, I would have not thought of that, even though I've seen those. But yeah, like HBO was.
So can massive. I ask just like a poll question here? What show would you say best represents, like when you think of the 2000s television, what's the first show that comes to mind for you? Because I couldn't answer this. The Office?
That's what I would probably say too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an easy answer, but that's the first show that pops into my head. That or Lost. One of those two. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are both my answers. It depends on what you're thinking, but like those are so influential because we didn't have really any mockumentary shows before The Office, and then we've seen a number of them since then, and some that like kind of toy with it. Like Office leaned into the mockumentary of it hard, especially in the later seasons. There's some shows that like pretend, like Arrested Development actually is technically a mockumentary, but they don't have like talking heads, and only every now and then do they like, like there's a courtroom fight, and then like no cameras are allowed in the courtroom, so they stay outside the courtroom. Like that's
right.
So I think Office is a great answer. They're both a great. I can't decide. I'm sorry.
They're both too good.
I'm a terrible politician. I can't make a stand.
Do you have a different one in mind, Paul?
No, I mean that was the one that actually stood out to me the most too. But I don't know. I still have a hard time kind of like placing that as like just because it was really from later 2000s into the 2010s, so it's kind of half and half, even though the strongest part of it was in the 2000s, I'd say.
How many seasons was The Office? Was it
9.
8?
9.
Oh, 9, yeah.
2 without
so 2005 to
2006, I
Yeah.
think, was the first. And so like that 2000,
I wrote down 2005. Okay, so that's true.
okay.
I'm gonna look. I don't know. I'm just gonna look
The Office was 2006, if that's what you're asking.
Ding. Thank you.
It's
March.
I was
March 20
compiling my thought
2005.
before. Oh, go ahead.
Is that
What?
the British Office?
Oh, it says
5 to
American.
13. British
Right.
was like 2001, I think.
Never mind.
I need 2 apologies right now, Brian. You don't have to.
I'm just gonna hold this up again. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
instead of apologizing, I'm doubling down on the behavior and holding your alien hostage.
Let's just put it on the list of tallies for pain and suffering you've caused me, and I'll scratch off one of those.
Yeah. Right.
No, never. Never. So what I was gonna say is pre-2000, it was very rare to see. There was a very delineated line of movie actor versus TV actor, and 2000s is when we started to see that blend a little more, like especially with Steve Carell being on The Office, or well, no, I was gonna say Bryan Cranston, but he still was kind of more TV, but like.
Yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland, there you go. That's another good pick. Is that you saw that start to bleed over a little bit more, but then the high profile nature of these shows, like you brought up, Paul, built more and more prestige amongst TV shows, and like now we're seeing it a lot different, where we're gonna see plenty of these high level. Tom Hanks has had a TV show, and well, he had Bosom Buddies to begin with, but he went back to TV for Apple Plus, and like some of these other big names, who just was in another one, but there's all these
The
huge
Morning
names.
Show.
There's not. There you go, Morning Show. There's
Reese
not just this.
Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston.
There's not this big line. There's not a chasm between it. It's like when an actor's going to be in a show, you're not like, oh, that's beneath them. It's like, no, you're just excited to see that actor again. So we saw that start in the 2000s, and it's good to see how the seeds of that planted.
Can I bring up one more that
Yes.
technically TV, but you brought up Tom Hanks, and I had this on my list, but Band of Brothers. It's a mini-series, so it's kind of between both of them, but that show is
good.
just amazing. It has the history element, and like what I like about it too is in between all the episodes, they'll have the real people that these characters are based off of and everything, talking about what it was like for them. I mean, it's just, and then when everything is all over and they show, don't say the names, when they're talking until at the end of the very last episode, and you see these people, how they're still alive now, and they're talking about these stories and what they went through and everything. I mean, it's just, it has that emotional element to it. It has the production value of it, and you just are invested in all these characters. And then just the fact that this is all like true, like this all happened, it's just, that show is just amazing.
The show I wanted to highlight too, it ends up pretty much being a miniseries because it got canceled after the first season, and people still aren't letting it go, is Firefly.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
I loved that show, and Firefly spawned a movie. They at least had that, like, thank God that you could get closure from Serenity. And so that was a great movie. One of my like top 10, maybe top 15 movies that I love, but the show was really good. And it was, again, that like, it does still make me upset that Fox screwed it up, because like the pilot episode of Firefly played like a 2-hour movie. Like the whole concept of it was they're being chased by these alliance members, and like there's a spy on our ship. Who's that spy? But because they aired things out of order and you already saw the main cast, you didn't have that huge, because they actually like will mislead you and make you think that the spy is 2 of the main cast members. And instead, nope, it's this other guy that you're never going to see again. And so it's like, well, it's already ruined for us because we saw the pilot episode be the train job. And so they aired things out of order. They had long breaks in between stuff. And like, they just didn't do it any favors. and it had a really intriguing premise that could have gotten stale, but with only season 1 and a movie, it still ends up being really high quality. So I had to bring that up. Had to mention it before we close.
Yep. I had that on my list of honorable mentions I have not seen. So
Oh, well, it's really good. I'd let you borrow my box set, but I don't have a box set.
It's not a box set when it's just one season, is it?
I think it's 2 DVDs. I think that's it.
Is it like 8 episodes?
It's something like that. Yeah, it's not much. But but it was the start of Nathan Fillion's career, and it helped launch Alan Tudyk's and even Christina Hendricks. She's in a couple episodes. So
3 people I've never heard of.
Christina Hendricks was big in Mad Men. She's like the red-haired gal that she should. I figured she'd have a bigger movie career than she actually does. Nathan Fillion was never mind. Just look all them up. I bored myself.
That's definitely not going to happen.
Anyway, any other shows before we go into trivia?
Entourage and Dexter. Love those shows too.
I love it. Alex, you came ready to rumble, man. This is Alex's podcast. We're all just living in it.
That's the title of it, isn't it? Alex's favorite shows?
I mean, some of us, got married in that decade and had stuff going on, so we couldn't,
I can't help that you're older than me, Paul.
I missed it by like a year. I got married in 2010, so I was just right on the border of it.
Entourage was like my college show. That was the show that all my roommates, we would watch together. And I worked at the video store at the time, so I would just rent all the DVDs for free and we just watch them.
Nice. Entourage. I never watch Entourage. Although I'm a Jeremy Piven fan. I think he's underutilized.
Ari Gold. Yeah. Another character that you just hate, but he's hilarious.
Yeah. I saw him, like, my big, this guy's great, was in Family Man, if you ever saw that with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
He's just tremendous in it, and you're like, this guy has a lot of talent. So I'm surprised that wasn't enough to get me to watch Entourage, but...
Yeah.
And
he always plays that same type of character. It's kind of like the sleazy kind of bad guy.
Yeah.
And there was a movie I just watched not that long ago where he played like the good guy, and I'm like, what? How is Ari Gold this good guy? Oh, it was Serendipity. Like the friend, the good guy, the good friend who's
Yep. Another it's a similar movie to Family Man, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. Yep, 100%.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, that's it for that stuff. We're going to jump into trivia here. And because they weren't here for last week, you guys can try and guess and see if you know it. So last week we talked about Community, the episode Remedial Chaos Theory. At the end of that episode, constantly, Pierce's character keeps talking about how he had sex with Eartha Kitt in a bathroom. Well, what Disney villain did Eartha Kitt play?
I don't even know who Eartha Kitt
Ursula.
is.
No. Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. Eartha Kitt is she was the old Catwoman from the Batman Adam West series.
Yeah. Pull the lever, Kronk.
Yes, that's her. That's who slept with Pierce. All right,
that's a great movie.
So we talked a lot about celebrities being in TV shows in the start of that this season, and especially we also talked about Lost. So which major celebrity was originally thought to be playing Jack Shephard? Who did they?
I know this one.
Who did they want to get for that role? I don't know if they signed it. They had conversations with them, but I don't know if they actually were offering it to them.
Well, the actor was interested until he found out what they were going to do with that episode, and then he backed out, and then they changed what they were going to do anyways.
What were they going to do?
They were going to kill Jack in the first episode and be like a whole big, we built this guy up as the main character, and then he's dead, and it was going to be like Kate taking over, and then that's why they were going to get this big name guy just for the episode, and the studios were like, no, you can't lose all the goodwill and kill the main character in the first episode.
Yeah.
Is this guy, he was like a famous movie actor?
Oh, yeah, you've heard of him,
you'll know who it is when we tell you. Actually, so Brian, it was because it was going to end up being the extended role, because that was originally what they're going to do. They're going to kill him. That's why this actor was like, okay, I can be in an episode. And then it was like, well, actually, the producers want to backtrack that and have him there. And so he's like, I don't know if I can.
So he
commit.
wanted to sign up and be killed in the first episode.
Oh, he did. Okay, so I got
Yes.
that wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but you had the gist of it. That's fine. All right. Well, let us know if you know that. Text us, and if you don't have our numbers, text Paul. He has our numbers. So, if you have any complaints about this episode, please text them to Paul as well. He really is a great lightning rod of hate. He's a referee, so he knows what that's like. So,
Fact.
He's used to.
Hey, I guessed the trivia in the chat. Did I get it right?
oh, let me take a look.
Correct.
Yeah. Well done.
Aw.
Good job. That
Give me a
saves
hint.
us from having to bleep out things. So anyway, now here's my rant with a lot of cuss words. Here we go.
I don't have time to give you a hint.
Okay. Thanks.
Christian Bale?
No.
No.
Dang it.
Until hey, also thanks to our guests. We had a lot of fun. Paul, Alex, you guys are great. It's always fun to have even just one guest on, but to have two quality guests, it really.
Can I just point out that you didn't even introduce me this time? Does that mean that I'm just like a co-host now?
You're a recurring guest star.
Okay, I'll take it.
You are the Steve Martin.
If anything, you get mentioned in the previously on, and then people are like, "Oh, he's going to be in this episode because we haven't seen him for a while, and he's in the previously on." So that's how those work. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Paul.
I'm Alex.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.